Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out on a rainy night. At least we didn't have the World Series to compete with for the election debate, so I feel like we're in a good spot. Tonight is our third community outreach meeting relative to the Healdsburg Avenue improvements, which is a follow-on. It's really the implementation of the Central Healdsburg Avenue plan, which was produced over a period of about 2 years and approved by the City Council in 2014. Just a couple of housekeeping things, a couple of introductions. First of all, we have a number of people here that are part of the consultant team, and we have a number of people here from the city. David McCallion, who is, are you officially now our new city manager? I am. Okay, well, congratulations. Great to have you. Brent Solney, who is Director of Public Works. Barbara Nelson, who is our Planning and Building Director. Let's see, Terry, anybody else here from the city?
We have Councilmember Chambers and Councilmember-elect, I think there's some here, right here as well.
Okay, great, thank you. From our consultant team, Bill, do you want to introduce your team members?
Sure. Yeah, so Bill Silva with GHD, so we're the prime consultant for the project. And Jim has been doing a fantastic job leading our public outreach. Tonight, David Gates is going to do a lot of the presenting relative to tonight's events because of his background in landscape architecture and planning. And then Steve Rupko is running the machine over there. He's our lead designer.
David, would you like to introduce your team?
Yeah, I'm Dave Gates. In the back we have Kelly Latosky. She's invited you here, and you've got Anna Dominguez. They're our team that put this together for you tonight.
Great. Okay, so a couple quick housekeeping notes. If you have a cell phone, maybe turn it off, put it on vibrate so you don't interrupt us. Second thing, you should have been given an exit survey when you came in. It'd be appreciated if you would just kind of keep that, fill that out. It's been very helpful. Talk a little bit about some of the information we've gotten from people and how that's helping to inform what we're actually doing here. So tonight's a really important
Yeah. Just one last thing. I wanted to see these cameras around. We have access to Healdsburg here tonight, so those of you who get channel 26, I would encourage you to check it out. We were able to take the last program, which is currently airing. This meeting will be on the air.
Give us a week.
Give them a week, and you'll see it. So that's why you see all the cameras around. We want to make sure that the community kind of sees what we're doing behind the scenes. So sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that. Yeah, if we can maybe kill all the lights except the back one, and Steve, if you can do the next slide. So tonight is going to be, it's a longer meeting than normal, so hopefully you knew what you signed up for when you came. We're going to be here until about 9 o'clock, and we're going to do a couple of things very quickly. Just a couple of quick highlights from the past 2 meetings. How many people have not been to any of the meetings before? Okay, so pretty good cross-section. Given some of the competition we had, thought it might be good to just give you a quick synopsis of what happened in the first 2 meetings. I want to talk a little bit about the Central Healdsburg Avenue plan, because that document, which as mentioned, was about a 2-year process, adopted last year, really laid the foundation for much of what you're going to be talking about tonight. And then David's really going to do the bulk of the discussion tonight, talk about design opportunities and the elements for Healdsburg Avenue. And then the fun part is we're going to break into groups. You're kind of organizing tables. Take about an hour to do a number of exercises. It should be kind of fun. Spend a few minutes reporting out what you came up with in your groups. And then David and his team will do a synthesis of what we heard from everybody. And this is not a final conversation. This is the start of the conversation to get input on the physical kind of character and sense of place that will be occurring on Healdsburg Avenue once we solve some of the engineering and functional requirements. Go ahead, Steve. So, again, real quickly, you are here. We're on the 3rd meeting. This is it for 2014. There will be 3 more meetings in 2015. We have not set the schedule because we wanted to see how these go, what we learned tonight, and that will inform kind of the topics. But we anticipate those will largely be in the spring. These are some tentative placeholders where we'll take what we heard tonight, put that together into maybe some more options or more complete physical designs. There'll be some discussion about what the roundabout, how you would actually drive that, and how that will actually work for emergency responders and the average person. And then there'll be a final presentation, ideally, on the concept and the final plans in May. So I hope you'll tell all your friends how much fun you had tonight and continue to watch. The paper's been very good about publishing both what's happened at these meetings as well as when the next one is. So I hope you'd encourage people to come. Go ahead, Steve. Okay, so a couple of very quick highlights. For those of you that weren't here before, those of you who've seen this, go ahead and check your email or something. We'll get through this quickly. First of all, this is not a new idea. There was a lot of comments at some of the meetings, why are we doing this? We've never talked about it. This is actually something that's been in discussion and been covered by a number of policy documents for almost 20 years. Most recently, most specifically, starting in about 2003. So the primary emphasis is that the five-way intersection, there's a number of pedestrian safety and vehicular safety issues that need to be resolved. There's obviously a train coming through there, and that creates some other safety things that have to be resolved. But there's also, with the approval of the Central Healdsburg Avenue plan, the potential long-term relocation of New Forest, development will be coming, and so this is all about improving how utilities and traffic and pedestrians will function within this corridor, not to mention the quality of the experience when you drive into town. Second thing is, this is not a single project. I know there were some comments made at some of the other meetings, boy, this is a lot of money for a roundabout. This is much more than the roundabout. The roundabout is resolving the five-way intersection. There are actually 5 components to this. The major component, or one of the big components, is actually improving Healdsburg Avenue from Exchange Street all the way up to the five-way. What it looks like dealing with improving pedestrian movement, sidewalks, etc. Reconstruction of the Foss Creek culvert, which you don't really see, but there's some serious water flow and structural issues in that culvert, and that needs to be rebuilt. There's an upgrading of and repair and expansion of utilities to accommodate future development within that zone. So really, the city is investing in that area in order to allow development to begin to occur in an area that they've targeted as a priority development area. And then the last one that everybody seems very excited about is just putting all of the overhead lines in that area underground. Cable, phone, power, and actually getting it underground so that corridor is much more appealing visually, as well as it will improve some of the capacity of it. So that was for the first meeting. The second meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about the value and the importance and the qualities of Roundabout. And I had just a couple of conversations with people while we were waiting here. And there's a couple of really important takeaways from the last meeting. And the first one is that roundabouts are much safer and less expensive. I'll talk about what that means than a signalized intersection. The diagram on the upper left-hand side there shows, right in here, shows that you have, with a roundabout, you have far fewer conflict points between cars and or pedestrians than you do in a four-way intersection. The second thing is they're designed to make people slow down as they drive through them. So the perception that people are going to be zipping around there is just not possible because of the way that they're designed. So you have fewer conflict points with people driving slower. And what that means is that there's a significant reduction in the number of accidents with injury. And just if you're really interested in this topic, Google Carmel, Indiana, which has really made roundabouts one of their key hallmarks for their community, and they've done a number of these, and they've shown a 78% reduction in accidents with injury over their four-way signalized intersection. So really good data and history and record there. And when there is an accident, the impact is far less. So this is a chart that actually Carmel put together that shows that the average, when you have an accident, that in a four-way intersection, the average is about $10,000 worth of damage to somebody's car. In a roundabout, it's about $2,500. So there's a much lower level of expense and impact because of the way they're designed, the speed at which people are driving. Okay. The other thing that a lot of people have asked about, I was just having this conversation before we get started, is how do pedestrians and bicycles get through a roundabout? Because it does seem a little counterintuitive. It's not just crossing at the crosswalk. But first of all, the sight lines in a roundabout are directed at the pedestrians. So you're not kind of looking out at your left or right side peripherally. You're looking dead on at them. So there's actually better safety for the pedestrian. The pedestrian is only crossing one lane at a time. You can see in this image, there's one lane, they go to the center island, and then they go to the next lane. So they're only crossing one at a time, so there's much better safety in that sense. Pedestrians have priority. Cars actually have to yield to the pedestrians. Cyclists, actually, as they come into this, and one of the things we'll be working through in the design is where the cyclists go, but they actually have the opportunity to actually just go into the flow of traffic. And because of those fewer conflict points that I talked about earlier, it actually works better for bicyclists. And the fact that people are driving slower just makes it easier for them to react quicker and also to yield to pedestrians. The other question a lot of people have had is, can roundabouts, especially because we're talking about a single lane roundabout, what's going to happen to the big trucks? Roundabouts are designed to accommodate all vehicles, big and small. There is a narrow lane that just kind of visually provides a kind of a traffic calming effect for people as they're driving in there because the pavement looks narrower. But there's this so-called truck apron, which is that red zone that you see in the center there, that trucks can actually drive up on. So there's plenty of room for the trucks to maneuver around there, be it a fire truck, a truck hauling construction equipment, or a truck hauling grapes. They will be able to get around this. It's all designed to accommodate that. Okay, so that's kind of the last 2 hours of meetings, community meetings in 5 minutes. I want to jump quickly to the Central Healdsburg Avenue plan because, as I said, that's a keystone document for the work that is undergoing now. First of all, the CHAP, as we've called it, the kind of the acronym, it's a vision plan, not a specific plan. So what that means is it sets out policies, it sets out guidelines, it sets out some framework issues. It doesn't define in detail what goes where. So the idea is it provides a vision for that area. This is the area basically from the five-way intersection down to Exchange Street, out to 101, not quite to Front Street, kind of midpoint in there, but it's really a lot of those industrial lands that are likely to change over time, just given what's happening in Healdsburg and the proximity to the freeway. It really was meant to set the vision for that area before development comes. So before a developer shows up with an idea, this was the community coming together. It was a very active community process that set together a vision of what they wanted to happen. So there's vision, principles. It really is based on a street type framework. So what is the character of the streets in that area that define not land use, but what's the pedestrian and vehicular experience in those areas? And then it provides some design guidance for how the buildings around that inform it. So the first thing, the really biggest thing is the CHAP plan set out this vision that the area south of the five-way would be a distinct district that connects to, but is differentiated from the existing downtown. And this was a conscious decision to say this isn't just trying to pull downtown and bring it all the way down Healdsburg Avenue. It's to recognize the fact that downtown is a special place. It has kind of its own vitality and economics. How do we create something that is complementary? Does not cannibalize downtown, but actually works with downtown, but has its own kind of different character and feel. And that's going to be very important as you get into the discussion tonight. Go ahead. The second thing is there's a number of principles. I think there's 13 principles within the plan, but the one that speaks directly to what we're talking about tonight was the requirement or the need to choreograph an enhanced arrival sequence via Healdsburg Avenue into downtown. And David's going to talk about this, but the idea, you're coming off the freeway, what are you experiencing, whether you live here or you're just coming to visit as you move into downtown? And some of the things that are talked about is the need for creating outdoor rooms, kind of spaces along that streetscape where people could gather and have a drink or whatever. It's not, and there's a big part about not being thematic window dressing, that we're picking, some, Disney-esque style. It's really about a true sense of place, not window dressing, but really figuring out the character. Carefully constructed set of experiences and informed by how the buildings shape the edges. And the key piece of that then is this idea of an urban street frontage. Healdsburg Avenue within the plan document was identified as an urban street. There's 4 different street types in there. What that means is they want to create a diverse but cohesive streetscape, which again, very important to remember as you do your work tonight. It's probably an area that has the highest levels of foot traffic and it's the most desirable development sites. And some of the key things is that the building edges want to be active, they want to be transparent, they want to open onto the sidewalk, so you want the sidewalk to somehow have a presence that is connected to that. Really don't want to have parking up against the sidewalk there, really want to have building edges, and really want to limit the blank walls. So it's much like, this is the little image of H2, but how that edge really just kind of blends or connects the inside of the building to the street. Okay. Before I switch over to David here, just quickly then, I mentioned how important the exit surveys were. So as we've been collecting those, just quickly, here's what we heard people really liked about what we were headed, the path that we're headed on, and some of the things that people continue to be concerned about. So the things that people really liked a lot was underground and utility lines, upgrading the experience of Healdsburg Avenue, improving Foss Creek, and then David will talk about that. And then the safety benefits. I think once we went through the presentation last time, people were pretty excited about what the safety implications of the roundabout were versus the five-way. Things that people were concerned about was how if Healdsburg Avenue narrows and there's a median, how do you actually turn left if you're coming up and you're trying to get into some of the shops along that area there, like the veterinary clinic and things like that. How the roundabout will actually work, how big trucks will navigate. We touched on this, but these last three were things that came out of our discussion last time, and I think are a perfect segue to David. There was questions about how do you minimize, how do you get people around the roundabout without polluting it with signs, making it looking very engineering-like. What is the role of the roundabout in that whole Healdsburg Avenue experience? Is that an arrival point and maybe a new part of downtown, or is that kind of the doormat and threshold to downtown? So that's kind of a philosophical discussion. It'd be interesting for you to poke at tonight. And then what will be the character of those improvements, which is the perfect segue. David.
Thank you, Jim. So we're here tonight as designers, so that enough talk, enough imagery and enough planning jargon. We have to get to the point, with your help tonight, of creating a plan that actually can get built out there. So far, there's been a lot of talking and diagram creating and other elements, and so we're going to walk you through a process tonight that's a little different, and we hope it's fun, because this is a very difficult task to design a stretch of road. Can you hear me? Okay. So our goal is to create an event where we're going to put you in tables, we're going to give you workbooks of information, of images. We're going to ask you to define your sense of the vision, the sense of feeling of this strip of road. We haven't been idle. Bill's team's been busy. They have an engineering diagram that we can use as a base. We'll show you that. And we're going to take the street corridor and break it into bite-sized pieces, so hopefully it makes it more fun and easier for you to take a very complicated process and sort of piece it all back together. We're going to give you 45 minutes to create your plan in groups, and we're going to give you an hour plus or minus, depending on what the clock tells us, to stand up and have a spokesperson for each team. We're envisioning 6 teams. A spokesperson will explain why that team scheme is what it is and what is the feeling of this street corridor. We'll all listen to that. We're going to take extensive notes and try to have an understanding of what each of the 6 teams said to us. We'll coalesce that into some patterns. You'll see us again. We will emerge back here with some schematic plans that actually have materials and light fixtures and street trees and assumed elements on the edge of the street. So it's a very important exercise for us, because you're going to kickstart us into something that's very tangible and very real. 4 takeaways from the CHAP study. You guys actually voted on different looks, if you remember. It's been a while. But the highest vote, 67%, wanted a sense of the creek, Floss Creek, to be a part of the street. The second most important element was art and artfulness, the experience of it. That was 64%. And the third one was discovery routes. And right behind that was sort of varied pockets, which means sort of as you're walking along the sidewalk, little places to see, things to smell, things to touch. It's not just a sidewalk, but it's an experience. And so that's a great takeaway for us. And we're going to I'll give you some instructions on how to actually go through this. But I'm going to walk you through sort of some images right now and sort of set the tone. I guess give me the next image. And so we've been asked to design the stove. We need to talk a little bit about the kitchen. And so again, it's a vision, it's a feeling. We're not asking for a particular tree type or a light fixture or a tree guard. What are the feelings? What is your sense? You're here, you've been here, we have our feelings. You're going to help us. So the next image then, we're trying to look at what makes this place special, and I know this has been covered briefly, but from a design point of view, this place has been discovered. It is special. People know it's special. People come here because of that. You're here because of that. So we're trying to get our thumb on it. So obviously ag, obviously there are these pieces. There's history, Go to the next one. I'm going to go through this quickly. But there is a gestalt. There is an overall sense of this place. We need to understand it and clarify it and build on it. Next image. So these are just pieces, whether it's a native plant garden along the edge of the creek, or that's a bench, I think, you know, at Shed, which is kind of fun. So you've got a real range of things. That's that big log that broke through. You've got new architecture, you've got old architecture, you've got a lot of trees. Next image. So, and then looking more at the street that we're dealing with, we're going to be connecting to something that's already there. And there's already been talk about, there's the more formal part, this is the more casual part that we're going to be building. So this is what we're going to connect to. This is what you have now. Signage, you've got Shed on the lower right is very unique architecture. It's kind of fun, but it's very different than a lot of historic architecture. You've got a lot of things going on. We need to cut through those things and take them apart and put them back together on our piece of street. Next image. So let's talk about what we're dealing with. We've got a river, we got a beautiful community, we got a town plaza. We're fortunate that 101 did not slice this town in half like so many Caltrans corridors did. It left it very much intact. You've got a railroad cutting right through downtown, of all things. Of course, that's kind of what makes it special. And then, of course, the river and all the agriculture that goes with it. Next image. So this is what we're dealing with tonight. It's a piece of street. You know, it has a Foss Creek corridor going through it. It has a rail line slicing through it. It has, as you come off the freeway, you've got a first impression. You arrive at a gas station and a McDonald's parking lot. You know, we can change that. It's basically 4 lanes of road through that entire strip coming into what will become the roundabout, which will be here. And very little parking on that. It's rather wide. There's a shared lane in the middle that you can make turns off of. It's a lot of asphalt, probably not nearly as scenic as the upper part. Next image. So what we're trying to do is, I'm going to break this into bite-sized, digestible pieces. You don't have to listen to this, but when we give you a base map to make your collage on, it'll have this information on it, but I'm going to walk you through it so you at least know how we're perceiving it. So in dealing with the street, we think something should happen very special here. At that point, you're out of Caltrans way, you're coming into this place. It's what we're calling the first impression. Here's 6 McDonald's with the parking lot, and then you're pretty familiar with the other facilities. This is what Jim was talking about. This is going to change. You know, we need to create this vision so when the private sector comes in and has a great idea, it's going to be in sync with the vision that this community has. So we have Area 1, and we're calling that transition. And the diagram we're going to be working with tonight has that Area 1 basically as 4 lanes of traffic with some median shared, and it's going to transition from 4 to 2. When the right-of-way goes to 2 lanes, that allows for more medians, it allows for more planting area, it allows for some parking on the side. So it's a different feel, it's a different travel pattern. And then Area 3, we're coming to something, and that'll be the roundabout. And it's going to be highly visible. It'll be a very important thing that you've come to that really sets the tone for this community probably more than anything else we've got. You know, and it precedes the plaza, and we, as Jim mentioned, we don't want to cannibalize the magic that is the square, the retail center, where we want to build into it. So the next image now, and I don't want to get too lecturing here, but there is an engineering diagram. These guys have been working hard and fast. There are regulatory issues about sight lines, about all the underground, about the creek culvert that's failing. There are a myriad of pieces that need to be satisfied and defined to get to a point where we, the landscape architects, can start to build on what the engineering team has. So I'm going to quickly go through. Here you see it, and this is the roundabout. This is the rail line. You're seeing a new center travel lane. You're seeing sidewalks. You're seeing the 4 lanes there transitioning to 2. You're seeing the pieces, and I'm going to just explain And we're going to treat these diagrams as something we're designing with and around. Those are going to lead us, those are going to inform us into the imagery we can create. So the next image then, I'm just going to fly in pieces of it. So these are the travel lanes. It's a little hard to see, but basically 2-lane, 2-lane, middle zone, narrowing into 2 lanes. So 4 to 2, then you're seeing median areas where there's actually no car at all. Next image then. These are the planting areas. So when you create a new curb, we've got a 5-foot strip on either side for street trees and other things. And there's some very generous areas. You can see where we're transitioning from 4 to 2. We get some nice pockets. We get some very nice corners. The old curb line was way back here. So we're seeing a lot of opportunity to bring in character, bring in green and other things in those zones. Next one. This is the crosswalks. A little hard to see, but you're seeing we're going to be getting across the street in these areas, crossing here, crossing there. It's very, very intricate to work with pedestrian and bicycles relative to the roundabout. Next image. The median itself, these are the dark areas. This whole zone right here, not sure why the color's not jumping on that, but that's a turn lane, and the medians are the green areas we saw before. Next image, I think, will show you those are the parking areas. So that strip, that's zone number 2, remember, has those places to park along the street. Next one. This is the railroad. It's the elephant in the room. It's large, it's dangerous, it's noisy. It has a rail station not far away, which is actually very great a piece to this. Next image. The roundabout itself, which we'll see a little bit more in a minute. It's big, it's got a lot of reality to it. Next one. The turning lane, which is this mid-zone, the 2 travel lanes on either side. It allows you to get in the middle and make turns in either directions. It doesn't have to be all turning lane. There might be some greenery in there in certain places. We'll find out, but that's a key part. Then the walkways, you're seeing sidewalks on 2 sides, a 12-footer on east, an 8-foot wide sidewalk on the west, the lower side. Next image. This is a roundabout. I won't get into too much detail, but for our point of view, anything in red has to be lower than 2 feet high, and we're thinking, sculptural elements, low walls, signage, and other elements. And then anything in the blue, 3.5 feet. So you can see a lot of site realities, a lot of character that's set by the safety factor of seeing a train, seeing a pedestrian, seeing cars as it moves around. And Jim went into a nice detail on all the benefits of that. This is the diagram we have to work with. Next image. So now what we're going to do is try to take the street, and we have a list on the wall, and it'll be part of your workbook. But basically, we're going to take a street and break it into a series of zones, a drivable zone, a plantable zone, a walkable zone. And within those zones, you've got signage, light fixtures, columns, awnings, bollards, you name it, fruit stands. And so on the side walls here, we're not going to expect you to memorize all that. So we've got the list there, and we've got the instructions, and it'll be all part of what you need. But I'm going to walk you through some of the pieces just so you know how we expect you to use this workbook. We're going to sort of show you images and explain what the zone is. So next image. So what we've done, this is a cross section. This is down to the south end where you have 4 travel lanes. So all those things I just talked about, show up. So this is the walkable zone, so-called sidewalk. No parking, so you go right to a travel lane, then you got that middle zone, that transition zone, 12 feet. It's going to be mostly striped. It's a turn lane, travel lane, 12-foot walkway. Zone 6, and all these are color-coded, so I'm going quickly. Zone 6 is what we're calling an extended architectural edge. So it's going to be building entries. It might be little setbacks. It might be column lines. It might be an arcade. It might be an awning. So we've given a series of vertical lines. The building could sit out here with the door sitting here. So it's kind of a flex zone where the architecture meets the sidewalk. And then on this zone, we've got another, which these are all keyed here, which is what we're calling a plaza zone. So somewhere that architecture might recede 20 feet, and you might have a little outdoor eating area or a plaza. And you might also have a paseo, where you make a right turn and you walk. And remember those 5 criteria? Discovery, routes, and sort of having fun with nooks and crannies. That's where those will happen. So there's one more section now, because this is that first zone transition. You know, this is the next zone. Yep. And so you're seeing now we've got architecture on 2 sides. We have 2 travel lanes. So all of a sudden, we got a lot more fun here with landscape architecture. We've got our building setback zone. So we've got the plaza zone. We've got the corner. Keep in mind, at these corners, we can do exciting things. So we've got the corner zone. We've got that building edge zone, which flexes. We've got a nice sidewalk, a nice plantable zone. Now we've got some parking on the street. So we have a separation between the parking. Single travel lane, that same 12-foot median and turn lane. Another travel lane, more parking. Another green strip, 5 feet. Another 12-foot sidewalk on the east side. And then we've got that architectural setback zone. And in this particular one, we have the creek zone, you know, because the creek will show up on the west side. And that was a high criteria, was to take the creek, try to bring it back best we can, and make it a usable, visible, important part of the community. So the next image, I'm just going to give you some character sketches. Here they all are together. This is the base map you're going to have. You're going to have a 5-foot long drawing, and it's going to have this on top of it. And we're going to ask you to create cutouts and images that show us what you think happens in these areas. Sort of a free form. So what do you want to do with this plantable area? What do you want to do with the possible building edge over in that area? That we're going to let you tell us. So next image then, I'm going to go through each zone and just give you travel lanes. Pretty obvious, right? You know, we might be able to do something with the asphalt. Maybe there's a chip seal or something, but travel lanes tend to be travel lanes. Next image, zone 2, crosswalks, you know, and medians. What do you want to do there? You can put concrete, you can put colored pavers, you can put cobbles. You know, there are a range of things you can do. Our booklet probably has 20 or 30 images of what you could do there. And if there's not an image there that capture fancy, then draw on there and say, I saw an image in Santa Fe, New Mexico, or wherever it was. Tell us what it was. This is your chance to sort of educate us. So these are just images. There are many more in the booklet. Next one. So the parking zone. And you can think about the parking zone. It could be striped. It could be paved. It could have a different color to it. It doesn't have to be gray asphalt. So what are the edges? What are the curbs? You know, we worked on a project in Livermore that has 2 3-inch curbs, you know, and it's easier for handicap, and it doesn't look like suburbia. There are things you can do. What are the images that work for you? The signage, the bollards, the barriers. We want to create probably some degree of separation so the cars aren't necessarily right on the sidewalk. You know, and if you look at what's out now, you have planting zones, bollard zones, some of the regional water quality that you've just done on some of your streets will be happening on this street. So images that can happen on the parking zone. Next one. The planting areas, that's pretty obvious. As you move forward to the north, it's all ginkgo trees. Fantastic yellow color going on right now. It's very cool. You can extend those. Maybe you put something different around the roundabout. Maybe you bring the ginkgos to a certain point in zone 1 and do something different where you've got 4 lanes. Maybe it has a different character. Maybe if the creek comes about, maybe you put riparian or native plants on the street near the creek. Tell us what you're thinking. These are just examples to show what's there now, different materials, all sorts of things. So we've given you lists of elements and then images for them. Next one. The walkway itself, it can be concrete, it can be a myriad of things. You have particular tree grades and particular elements now. You can keep those, you can do a mix. What's in your mind? What do you think that sidewalk should be? Next one. The building edge. Columns, arcades, places for display, whether it's whatever it is, something that gives the street life
character. It's a patina. It's an artful feeling. It's got great smells. It's got things you could buy. It's part of sales. It's part of what makes this community, whether it's outdoor eating areas. So again, we've got a list of things. You know, it's the extended building edge. We're not talking architecture, but images we've given you have architecture in them. We can't pretend like there's not an architectural edge, which is why we're having you build a collage, because it's sort of the overall pieces together that we want to hear from you about. So if you say, well, I like this because it's got a lot of trees and they're close together and they're tall and they make the building not look so strong. That's what we want to know. You might take that image and scratch out the building and say, I like the trees, I hate the building and the building color. You're educating us here. So all of these images are sort of part of that feeling of the street. Next one. The plaza, we don't know where they'll be, but we're saying, well, maybe there are opportunities. The corner is an obvious one. There's some now. Who knows, when the developer comes in, there may be a street here, there may be a plaza on that corner. If the creek happens here, maybe there's a plaza that this developer wants to sit next to the creek and have a creekside dining. Talk to us about that. What are you thinking there? Next one. The corners themselves, there may be more. If a street comes in here, there may be a nice corner there and there. Who knows? There may be a widened driveway. So what can a corner be? You guys have just done some nice things with your corners with regional water quality, some nice new planting and paving. It could be more of that, or what's your vision for those? It could be seating areas. It could be a range of things. We've got some very sizable corners that we can have a lot of fun with. Next one. The roundabout itself, as I mentioned, there are a lot of regulatory requirements there, site distances and heights and things, but again, let's talk about it. What kinds of materials? You know, it's obviously going to have a lot of planting in there because we're not going to have outdoor dining there. So what are the kinds of plant materials? What's indigenous? What's the feeling about that? Next one. The creek itself, we're not sure exactly what form it might take, but talk to us. Is it natural habitat like the botanical garden and native plant garden off to the north by Shed? Is it a place to sit and eat? You know, what is it? You know, is it pure habitat and wild plant material? Talk to us about that. And it tracks right here, goes underground here, comes back out here. There's different pieces of it here that might have some great opportunity to bring back. And who knows, maybe in the future, a lot more of it. Next image. So what we want to do now is, and I think we're actually doing fine time-wise, I think we want to break you into 6 groups, 6 or 7 people per group. We've got scissors and tape, and we've got everything you need. And we're going to take a 5-minute break. We would like all the architects to split up and be on different teams.
Changing the architecture.
Hi everyone, thank you. So one of the main things that we were looking at here, the first thing that we came across, and since I'm the first guy, I'm not sure how we're going to be doing, how we'll be presenting, but I'm going to go through this list here. And the travel zones, it was already, given to us what we've got. But the main element that we were all in agreement to was having bike lanes. I was really saying that between Windsor and Healdsburg that the bike lanes are really wide and they're on both sides of the road. And tying that in somehow was something that we all were in agreement on. As far as the crosswalks and the medians, we were all in agreement staying away from brick and high maintenance things and more of a stamped concrete. And we were also in agreement to do those lit crosswalk systems where we don't know what the buildings are going to be or where, but having the lit crosswalk systems and having maybe stamped concrete versus a brick product or things that could be slippery, that was a thing. And several of us were saying something, and having bollards on both sides. Some of us didn't like the bollards because of the maintenance, some of us did. But having the lit, you have to have a hand thing to go ahead and do it. And then the visual of slowing traffic as they're coming into town was another element that I believe that we were all in agreement on. the medians that we are all in agreement on having, it's mandatory, it's statutory that we're gonna have catch basins with rain gardens there. That was the one, we were all in agreement with that. As far as the planting and stuff, we want to stay away from real high maintenance things. Maybe Cotoneaster or something that would, out in the middle where there isn't much traffic. Cotoneaster doesn't work real well where there's foot traffic. So choosing something that we know is going to hold up. There's certain plants that will work in areas where there isn't foot traffic, and there's others that will. The curbs and the gutters, the curbs and the barriers and the bollards, we're in agreement that having little bulb outs here and there is a good thing. Slowing the traffic a little bit, and then providing some planting on the one side. On the other side, the creek side, we were all in agreement that having a walled area along one side, I believe, was a bonus, and then having riparian on the other, and then having in the plan to have a setback of a riparian area would go ahead and benefit everyone. So you've got a real visual down there. The landscape strips, the bulb outs, the rain gardens, the lights and the banners, I think that I've covered that pretty much. The walkways, the tree grates, we want them embedded in the sidewalk. We don't want trip hazards. We want low maintenance. We don't want to have anything that's going to be lifting, being very careful what trees that we choose in the future that aren't going to be lifting sidewalks and such is very, very high. Again, the bike racks here and there was another element. So let's go with we didn't even touch the extended building edge because we don't know what those are going to be. We have no way of, the zoning is going to dictate what type of buildings go where, the size and the height. I was real strong when you're coming north on Hillsburg Avenue to somewhere have a visual area where you could go ahead and see Fitch Mountain and that.
They did add some, the building edge stuff here, Bob.
Yeah, okay. Some of us like the outdoor farmers markets, having some activity out on the sidewalk. We went with having little outdoor dining areas. We had the wall and then the creek with a riparian area. We didn't like fountains that had open water in them because I used to throw soap suds in fountains, and having dirty water, having sculptures with water elements that are running into a stone area with the recycling system seemed to be the preference. As far as the corners, we like the bulb outs, the hardscapes, and the creek. So going up here, these are the choices that we went with. We went with drought-tolerant plants, having some stones, some large boulders in the areas, having trees that would be different colors, different times of year was a real bonus. Having the planting strips down in the median in certain areas, predicated by where the buildings are going to be, was another thing. We do like the architectural elements as far as sculptures here and there. We like the wide sidewalks. Some of the sidewalks that you saw in the plans were just too LA. There was too much hardscape, so we softened it up with a lot of planting areas, I believe. These are the types of bike racks that we kind of liked. I think we had a lot of choice. We don't like these kind of bollards. We do like that curb type. Having some sculptures and some planting areas was something that we were all in agreement on. There's a different sculptures. We had many different types of sculptures. That's with the water element at the bottom.
And seating.
Seating. We like different types of seating. We had hard seating. We had benches that we liked. The steel benches were really cool. We've all seen what keeps out.
Okay, can you jump to your words now and your prioritization?
Sure.
And we'll jump to team two.
Here, our prioritization was on this sheet. So we went with small town. You can see that we had 3 different dots. Maintaining our agricultural heritage had a couple of dots. Artful, casual, So we went with agriculture, small town, casual, artful, environment, and authentic.
Okay.
Is anyone on the team, did I miss anything, or please say something?
What about your other sheet? Because we're running out of time.
Your other sheet. Your other sheet.
Spending your money.
Which one?
We didn't get another sheet.
You can get another sheet. We'll come back to you guys.
Other people's money, we said.
Yeah, where would you spend, of all the zones, what's the most important zone to you, the top three? Where would you, if you had extra money, what zone is most important to you?
We'll pass it around.
We'll come back.
During the transition, I would think.
We'll come back. Let's go to team two. Let's go over and migrate over there. Anywhere you can come up on the wall here. And you can put it actually next to theirs if you want.
Zone 9 to me, that's kind of going to be the focal point, that's where the roundabout is.
I think they're doing it.
Okay, so folks, okay, very well.
One thing that we felt was important in approaching Hillsburg was to maybe have some parking area right out near the freeway. Like, wouldn't McDonald's make a great area? We're gonna have cars, and so the cars don't all have to come downtown. Or maybe we thought parking over by the rail station, somewhere where you don't have to have so much downtown parking. Let's see. As far as corners, we weren't sure we liked flush curbs, but we thought if there was a strong visual and some barriers, that flush curbs might be okay and better for wheelchairs and such. We love those curved parking barriers and thought there might be some good places to go. There's a lot of curves around that. For the plaza, we did like fountains. There's an example of two that we like. We liked the tree grates that were built in for infiltration. For walkways, we liked arbors. We thought they were great. I like to walk under arbors. You can plant them or just have a strong structural element. We liked plenty of bike racks. There's a couple good examples. I think those are very nice. We like that one. We didn't like bollards. I would say no bollards for us. Let's see. Lighting. We like this lighting that we have, but we're concerned that any lighting be dark sky lighting, that the lighting doesn't go up into the up above and provide light pollution. Crosswalks, we thought the lighted crosswalk was a great idea. We were conflicted on what to use for crosswalk material. A lot of us liked this, and then somebody pointed out that would be too jarring to people with wheelchairs, if you had something brick. So maybe a colored surface. Just flat paving, but colored to define the crosswalk better. Let's see. We like that what Shed has done by the creek, the soft creek edge here, and the interesting thing they've done there for planting the tree that fell. We like the idea of different forms in the median plantings, you know, like, we don't want it to be all grasses, you know. We have a lot of grass already at Healdsburg, it seems, and I know we have to be concerned with water, but let's have some trees and let's have some height as well as some flat. We liked native habitat along the creek, native plants. And for the roundabout paving, some of us liked this and some of us said let's have a little more contrast, something like this. This is a picture of a roundabout that my husband and I photographed in Spain that we really liked. We like this graphic, which is so simple. It says it all. And we liked the idea there were grapevines. They were dormant. This was April. We had grapevines and olive trees in the roundabout plantings, and we thought that would be very appropriate for Healdsburg. Extended building edge, we liked outdoor dining and some architectural features. We didn't have any sculptures, but personally I would like sculptures. Let's see. And we liked this with the baskets. And we were concerned about the plantings, that we plant some things that would sequester carbon. Carbon banking is a big thing, you know, it's coming up. And, deep-rooted trees and things will sequester more carbon. That's about it.
How about your questionnaires,
Okay.
the prioritization?
Yeah. For defining character, we thought small town and eclectic because we think Healdsburg is already eclectic, and natural rather than formal was our preference. And in spending, roundabout is number one because that's the heart of the whole thing. If we have a choice of money, it should be on the roundabout and make that the very best it can be. And the creek, we really like incorporating the creek, and we'll put some money there. And the walkways, we feel are very important. So those are our three places we can spend our money.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Let's go to number 3 quickly. Up on the wall over on the left here.
I think we just have kind of a popcorn of ideas, not necessarily consensus in any place, but I'm going to start with where we thought we'd spend our money, and that was on the extended building edge. We thought really not having sort of a uniform building edge, but uneven in and out sort of spaces to gain more interest in that corridor would be really important. The walkways we thought were important because we're hoping we're going to inspire people to do more walking in that area of town. And if you focus on the walkways, people will walk there. And also planting areas. We wanted it to be very green. We had 2 other areas of interest which were significant interest, which were the creek and bringing the creek into people's awareness, and also the transition for the traffic. We thought that was going to be really important. Our words to define town, we had naturalistic, small town, and artful, and our secondary words were sophisticated, sense of discovery, and contemporary. So you see we're all over the map. But we wanted to talk about the roundabout having, we had the benefit of having Tim here, who's just moved from, actually still lives in and flew in today from Atlanta. And they just put in 1 roundabout where they were hoping they were going to put 3 because they spent all the money on 1. But they made some mistakes, but they did do some things well. One of them is that they burned the plantings in the roundabout, so people were not tempted to like go into the roundabout, get on it, you know, a few buses in line, and woohoo! I'm having my picture taken in the roundabout in Healdsburg. We wanted to plant some, it could happen. As indigenous as possible. We wanted them to change color in the different seasons. We talked about grasses for water filtration there. We stayed away from the fountain idea because of that being a sort of an attractive nuisance as well, although I like the idea over there of water sheeting down into the rocks. Also, a tree, so some kind of a symbolic tree in the roundabout in the area where you could have height was important. And area 2, I'm just going to be jumping all around. We thought it was important because of what's happened around H2 and will continue to happen there, sort of a columnar looking narrow corridor, that we have corridors of light in area 2. That really there are passageways through. It's the south end of town. There's a lot of beautiful golden light down there, and we want that to be reflected as well as possible. And one possibility of mitigating that would be a 2-story limit on the street, and then any higher stories back from the street, so you're not just going through this tunnel. It feels a little tunnel-like now, and certainly much more shaded, right where H2 is. I love that place, but I do feel like we're getting a little tunnel vision there, and you can't see the sunset or Fitch Mountain from there, or you won't be able to when they finish building. Arcades and paseos, we called them, were just little inroads. So going into Foss Creek, so the buildings could be around that area. And also here we have little parkettes, sort of planted areas with businesses around them. So they're not necessarily streets, but they're like an invitation to go into this natural space that has seating. Some seating like has already been instituted downtown. Also benches that can be planters as well, so people can sit and congregate there in a very casual way. Not maybe as intentional, but still things happen spontaneously, giving you that sense of discovery while you're sitting there. You're looking at something you didn't know was there before. And I wrote here, like San Antonio, I know the Riverwalk is a big deal, but that little creek area could be so precious in there, just if it was showcased in a great way. Now it's kind of a problem, but it could be amazing. Then we talked about succulents plantings on that walkway area that are more intricate and have more interest. Also, bike rentals, like in Paris, where you go and stick your credit card in and off you go. So that it really encourages people to leave your car behind and go at a slower pace. You're also encouraged to walk. Up here in the extended building edge, we really talked about encouraging deep awnings, both for shade in our hot summers and for rain. I could have used a couple of awnings today when I was walking downtown. And those covered areas could be for outdoor dining. They could be for like fruit stands, vegetable stands, but something that's not like all designated, like a homogeny of things. Just, you know, the apple grower has a stand down there, and the tomato person has her stand somewhere else. Outdoor dining, yes. And we talked about how people have tried to do it, like at the charcuterie. They have a couple of tables outside, but you kind of feel like you're sitting in the street and people are helping you eat your food. So we wanted it to be a more, lavish experience in terms of space. If there are pots that are planted, we would like them to have a maintenance budget, because we see that there have been good intentions and then things are dead. There's nothing worse than dead plants on the street. To incorporate the tree area into the borders, we talked about having something like a Santa Rosa plum, or French prunes or something like that along the promenade, because it reminds you of the history of this town, and they also are quite beautiful in all seasons. And for seating, designated public areas, let's see, something like is already existing in Healdsburg, just to carry that on. And so kudos for what's already happening. Then in the planting areas, Nat, I think our youngest member, really talked about wanting a contemporary feel and to modernize and differentiate from the current downtown to create a unique look. And he picked this really great thing with some, I think that's equisetum, I'm not sure, and some awnings and stuff. It's a great little modern park. Creative seating, not just something that does double duty or triple duty. And wider sidewalks, you talked about 12 feet, which just kind of makes my head explode because that's such a wonderful sidewalk size. But a whole block of wide promenade, not having it broken up. So keep signage and everything matching so you don't have this hodgepodge of signs. Up here in the walkway area, oh Nancy, I can't read it.
That was about the parking lot and
Oh yeah, having a parking lot, right, back in some area where New Forest is, as well as the bike rental. Small electric car rental to calm the incoming tourist traffic and feed into a more pedestrianized downtown, Bravo. To help mold the character of the new development more toward the old character of existing downtown. And what is this about the gallery?
that's just what we talked about, having these little walkways that go in off the block, you know, the businesses along the park idea where the galleries.
And then also to have where the streets come together to have a level sidewalk, no lip or something to trip going in and off of. I think this is my personal. I thought that since people are kind of hell-bent to get either off the freeway or on the freeway, if I had $5,000, it wouldn't even be a spit in the ocean, but I'd like to see like a walkway that went over the avenue, so you have like a nice vista of town and people could bypass having to walk across the street altogether. Am I missing something in particular? Okay. I did the words first. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Move on to the next one down here to the right.
Okay. We spent a lot of time talking and not so much time sticking because in our group we had several current business owners that are along the western side of the street in Area 1. And they were concerned and had issues about the current drivability, I guess you could say, of pulling in and out of the side of the street, and they were concerned about the 2-lane getting T-boned. So we spent a lot of time talking about practicalities like that. But one of our biggest concerns is, and I think that we should put a lot of intention is this transition is very important, and to make sure that this directly relates to this, so definitely pull all of the patterns into this area here. Let's see, where do I begin? I think we pulled some images of the current streets and crosswalks in town, and we crossed out this very urban looking seating corner. We want to avoid the over-urban design. Let's see. We liked the H2 hotel, the setbacks, and I think it's a really nice modern addition to the town, but it really fits in nicely. We like how the sidewalk kind of extends into the building. Let's see. I liked these sculptural plants of scale and drought tolerant. Let's see, we like the local produce idea. We thought that the tall palms would be a good example of a median solution, because there's some issues of, if anybody has been in Windsor and like pulled into the, or trying to pull out from like Home Depot out of the parking lot there, it's like the medians are filled with these low plants and you can't see anything. So I think to keep the canopy up high and to provide some shading would be nice. We also like the rockscape. So it doesn't always have to be planting, but it can kind of be like more of this sculptural idea or even art. I saw a lot of images of parking and wasted space. I think parking is a big issue in Hillsburg that we need to address. And to maximize the amount of real estate and not put trees in between cars. For the roundabout here, I saw this image and thought it would be really nice to have some symbolic, iconic art commissioned to a local artist that remains like a symbol of Hillsburg. I think it should be really non-literal and no words, but really evoke a certain emotion. So that person would really have to understand in Hillsburg and hopefully have been here for a long time. In the corners and crosswalks, I think we should avoid any sort of cobblestone or anything that doesn't really exist there already to keep the historic. We continue on from something. We're not reinventing the town. We're just continuing on. So I think that this is a good idea here. It shows concrete, but also it looks like there's some like old brick mixed in. So the idea of like old and new materials to remind you of where we've been and where we are going. Another one of our focuses is on the creek here, and we really like what Shed has done to allow some walkability along the creek and really highlight that feature, that natural feature of the town. One thing that we didn't put, but I really agreed with all of the bicycle emphasis, and I like how you have the idea of taking parking way over here and encouraging people to bike into town. That helps your parking issue without actually having to put more parking in town. And that's about what we have.
How about your words and your
So we have naturalistic, real town, which I think another word for that would be authenticity, and a unified theme. So really capturing this same essence and bringing it into here. So that just this transition is very smooth. And then our zone priority, we kind of assumed that there would be enough money for the roundabout, and that's the main thing. It's kind of like set in stone. So we picked some areas that might be extra. So parking, highlighting the creek, and just planting areas. Something that the last group said, something about a double. I noticed a lot of pictures in the workbook that were huge planters that took up a bunch of room, but there's nothing, it's just taking up a lot of space. So just really being intentional on giving things a dynamic use of beauty and functionality and sitability, or, you know, just maximizing your real estate, basically.
Very good, thank you. Next.
We started off sort of unloading all of our preconceptions and quickly got into a discussion, and were encouraged by our talkers to start cutting things out. Our initial discussion was on the difference between sort of meat and potato issues and the salt and pepper issues, and we felt that a lot of the choices we were given were more salt and pepper type choices rather than the meat and potato discussion. And So when we started and voting on the various booklets, it quickly became a salt and pepper fashion show as opposed to a meat and potatoes. So the collage is our preferences. We all voted on every picture, the ones we liked, and anybody that had any picture that had 3 votes went up on the collage. That's what we're seeing here. In general, a summation of those that, just from the conversation, is that we prefer planting over paving, simpler things over more complex things. Both at Urban Creek and Wild Creek, both sides, rain gardens versus raised planters, diversity versus homogeneity, and wood benches versus metal.
I don't have much to add. We really got into the craftiness with cutting. We were very short on scissors, so we got more scissors over and got more intense about cutting. So we have a very wide range of things here. Pavers for the roundabout, textured over smooth. The black and white image, by the way, had arrows pointing the wrong way for America. A lot of the pictures chosen for architecture are indentations, and choices for what was labeled plaza were choices for mini parks, and I heard that several other places also. Our choices for paving include a lot of pattern, both pressed concrete with bricks or concrete pavers, but not smooth. In the places that was smooth, you'll see choices of pattern over even or scored concrete. As far as the curbs, a lot of discussion about the 3-inch option that we heard about from some East Bay City. And the choice we made really in discussion was a flush curb, because it was explained to us that that actually has enough rise that it will work with rain gardens. You don't need a vertical curb with a cut to guide water into a rain garden. And so the idea of flush curbs with some of the images look like real dangerous constructions for parallel parking, while they might be ideal for diagonal parking to make 2 steps up. Our choices for plantings, most of the choices were low grasses. We didn't discuss indigenous over exotics, and I expressed a very strong concern about how many vertical elements there will be in this 350-yard length of Hillsburg Avenue, not counting trees, but all the signage that says turn around for parking back there, or roundabout coming up, think about where you want to exit, how all that is managed in both initially when it's unfamiliar to locals, or in the long term when it has to be completely explicit to visitors, is an issue I personally will show up for. What else did we? Lots of attention to on-street dining, both for the extended building edge. I think we have 2 images here of the Hotel Healdsburg. And I like the observation that we didn't really have an image that in front of the charcuterie, you don't really feel entirely safe in spite of a large pig looking over you. Bicycle racks. This is the one that got up here, but it seems like we could live with bicycle racks that we're using in town because they actually come free from the county. These would be very expensive. They look like cast stainless steel. I don't know. Oh, the corner choices seem really limited, so we have a note here. More images of corners, please. And some discussion said that the corners that were just done at North and Center are really satisfying. The rain gardens and the addition of seating in front of the general store by the goat is really welcoming and used. Even in the rain, it's being used. And not just by people looking for work. So here's an image of planters that also provide seating. Otherwise, I agree that planters that just take up a lot of space are problematic, especially when they're just scattered kind of on the curbside. And of course, we were very interested in the development of the creek as both a visual and a recreational area. And I can't say much more, I was busy cutting. The words. Oh, the words. Oh, my words. So we voted on those also, we really got into voting. So character, where's the character sheet? So agricultural, small town, and historic got the largest votes, and eclectic got a secondary nomination. And someone wrote in family, which I think is truer than we might have thought. I didn't see that until just now. The zone priorities, we had an extra $500,000. The walkways, the roundabout, and then it was really a tie. There was some misunderstanding of what plaza meant, and in talking about that after we finished this, there was a lot of enthusiasm that plaza meant pocket parks, as some of you discussed. And everyone said, yes, that's of some interest, and a vote for focusing on the approach. And then the Creek Plaza and parking zone got votes. We did not discuss keeping cars out of here.
Good job. All right, thank you all. Do we want to go back to the first team that didn't quite finish their priority?
We were unanimous on changing out McDonald's with an In-N-Out.
Okay.
Because of the architecture.
Okay. It's a meat and potatoes.
I'm just standing up to get out of the way. Somebody else can speak from our group.
We thought we had some unfinished business with your zone priority.
Which one is it? The top one? Okay, so we had 3 votes for Roundabout, 3 votes for the creek, 3 votes for travel lanes, 2 votes for planting areas, and then some minor interest in crosswalks, medians, parking, walkway, and the extended building edge.
Okay. Now we're going to have Kelly sort of summarize. She's going to take these lists, and our goal is to encourage you to sort of chat this out, because you've done it all in a group now, and there may be some combinations or some deeper consensus. That's what we're going to look for. And Jim reminds me, there's an exit survey that you all have. Please fill that out. How did you find out about us? And all those good things. You can't leave until you fill that out. So we'll get you out of here on time, unless you get into a good spirited discussion. We're going to turn it over to Kelly and have some dialogue about some of the things you talked about in groups. We're going to do it as a total group.
I'm going to keep this quick, so just going through the table summaries, the top 3 that emerged voting-wise were Walkway, Roundabout, and Creek. I'm just going to do a raise of hands real quick and go through these 3. If you individually, we made you build a lot of consensus. You might have felt a little bit differently in terms of priorities in your group. So I guess I just want you to raise your hand if Walkway is not in your top 3. So okay, is Roundabout not in your top 3? And is Creek not in your top 3? Okay. So overall, I think we, as a group, kind of feel strongly that these are our maybe top 3 zone areas, right? And then, so small town was the clear winner in terms of our favorite word to describe Phillipsburg, and then naturalistic. And then we have a 3-way tie. So I want you now to pick your favorite between these 3-way ties individually. So your choices are agricultural, eclectic, and artful. So pick one of these. Raise your hand if agricultural of those 3 words is your favorite. 10? Okay, raise your hand if eclectic. 8. Okay, raise your hand if artful is your favorite. Okay, agricultural is. And then was writing some notes as you guys were talking, and there were some clear things that every group touched on. Maintenance was brought up a lot, so that should be a consideration. Also drought tolerance when we're looking at plantings. And the creek restoration, I know there's a lot of discussion of making it usable on the urban side and maybe some recreational features. Outdoor dining, every group mentioned that, so an active sort of nice corridor. Bikes were a consideration across the board. And then rain gardens, extending, our drought tolerant sort of sustainable theme going on. And then also, a lot of people mentioned double duty for seating, which I think is a great creative use of space. If I missed anything else, feel free to chime in.
I think one was rocks. I think the use of rocks was a very common theme. I think the definition of fountain was not moving a lot of water, but washing water over rocks and art was another thing I heard, which makes good sense for energy conservation and water conservation.
Well, I'm sure when we get up and move around the room too, when we start seeing images repeated, you're going to get a visual. This is just listening to some verbals.
Is there anything we missed? I mean, is there anything, we're going to take these away and study them, summarize them and whatnot, but what is there that wasn't part of this that should be?
What about public restrooms? Is that way off, or is that part of the whole thing?
Public restrooms. Question? That's interesting. Yeah. Yes.
The idea of like a roundabout down by.
Rain gardens.
Well, I think that was discussed at length, and probably Brad or somebody would know better. It might have a life in the future, I'm not sure, but it's not on the table now. Yes.
We talked a lot about public parklands.
Yes. I like that, I mean, because we have plazas, corners, and facadas. That's kind of a hybrid between them, which I think is a good one. I like it.
I didn't mention it, but there was a general dislike of bollards as obstacles rather than convenience.
Actually, that's good to talk about. If you look up near the plaza, you've got tree grades and other elements that sort of separate you from the car. Is that something that doesn't work for you? Because a lot of other communities will create a separation, so wheelchairs and parents with kids get separated from a car door opening or something to do with the car, and that 5-foot edge has trees and planting and rain gardens, but it could have other three-dimensional things. Let's talk about that. That's what a bollard might do for you there. It could be a pot, it could be a bench, it could be any three-dimensional element, but so let's talk about that. The bollard might not be the better way to do it.
We were all against, I believe, the bollards except for functionality for the crosswalks, I believe, so.
Yeah, they control you, they suggest.
No, actually, if we put buttons on, that's all we wanted, and maybe some breathalyzers built in.
Will there be any more information on how that 4-lane to 2-lane transition is expected to work and how it's worked in other cities?
I think one of the upcoming events will be to talk more about those regulatory aspects of what that highway traffic movement has to be. So it will get discussed.
I think in the capital budget, there's around $2.5 million for this project, of which around 1.314 is set aside for actual construction. How far will that go once you build the roundabout and do the wet and dry utilities and underground utilities? Is there actually any money coming in this?
I think we're not worried about the budget. We're worried about the imaging character and functionality of it. Once we get a design, we will know costs, and at that point, we're going to have to come to reality with what is the budget. So we're not going to get everything we're dreaming about, but once we know what's given, what's underground, what's necessary for safety and all the other elements, we'll build on top of that. and our part, the flesh on the bones, is going to be limited by the budget. But right now, I'd rather deal with image. I think if we found more money or if we phased it, I don't want to take anything off the table for dollars now. We will at some point. We'll know what we can get, but so I'm going to postpone that discussion to a more realistic time in the process. We will deal with it. Yes.
Our group initially liked the idea of a textured roundabout, and I heard Richard's group say that as well, but owing to Tim's experience in Atlanta, they had a lot of bike accidents and some other kind of accidents because of the unevenness of that. And so they wish that they hadn't done it, and I think we can probably learn from some of that experience.
Yeah, it's got to be safe, and it's got to be safe for all types of movement. I mean, that's ground zero. So we won't do it at Atlanta. It'll be a safe surface. I think there are some different textures. Jim mentioned earlier that there's a separate apron that could be driven on by large trucks and other vehicles. That might have some texture, but it's not expected to be bikes and regular cars on a daily basis. So we will talk about those elements later on.
Early on, when you were showing slides, I hope it was a slip of the tongue, you talked about sidewalks being for pedestrians and bicycles. While Healdsburg doesn't have ordinances prohibiting bicycling on sidewalks, cyclists coming south on Healdsburg Avenue are not likely to ride on the sidewalk. And cyclists coming north from the southern parts of the county are not going to be coming off the freeway. So there's a decision to be made of whether we need bicycle lanes on both sides, because people riding to Healdsburg will be coming across the bridge, and a bike route through town would keep them off that section. Also, in your cross-section of the roadway, it looks, although one group talked about having bike lanes, and I think it'd be really important to have access for bicycles, it may be a place where we need sharrows, not a genuine bike lane. But there'd be very few cyclists coming from the south.
Yeah, we haven't solved the bike problem. It's a big one, an important one, and we need to look at where, what, second, class 2, class 1. It's going to be an issue too, because when a train comes through, there's going to be stop bars, there's going to be control, and the bike has to sit somewhere where there's a stop bar. You stop pedestrians, you stop bikes. We aren't there yet, but I think very clear message tonight. Bikes are important. Continuity is important. Linkage to regional trails, and so that's an important part of the puzzle we've got to continue to put together. I think what'll happen, it wasn't a slip of the tongue. You're going to have some on a sidewalk with small kids walking. We would hope to have all levels of biking solved. So we're just not there yet. Yeah.
How far along does SMART's plans for them putting their train track through this intersection? And what do they have plans to include a roundabout?
Somebody help me on that one. I'm not sure what the smart timing is. Bill or Brian?
To be determined.
Yeah, we don't know.
Other questions? We got one more minute. Let's not waste it. We're right on schedule here.
Can I ask you a question? Somebody had voted for travel lanes as a priority. I think it was the group over here.
Yeah.
What was the intent on that? Of that important? Was it just as fundamental as you need a corridor to get through, or was there something unique that you guys were thinking of with that priority?
Bike lane?
Well, it said travel lanes. I think travel lanes came up in this group as being a priority. I don't know if it's on top of the priority works.
I think that had to do more with fixing that whole sea of asphalt that's down there.
Okay.
To narrow that down and then accommodate bicycles and parking. And there's a lot, as we recognize, there's a lot going on there. I know for me personally, I hope that we don't solve it with a Caltrans solution, because we'll end up with more asphalt than what's there now. So, I ride a bike, and I think that if you're coming from the south I didn't have a bike lane through much of the county. I'm happy with 2 feet, 2.5 feet, 3 feet. I don't need 6.
Yep.
So, whatever we can fit in there, I know for me is beneficial for most cyclists. Just give us something.
Yep.
But not the Caltrans solution. That's the whole north end of town is the Caltrans solution, and that southern section of town is the Caltrans solution.
Not successful. Yes, okay.
I think some, maybe for, on talking about bicycles, I do ride my bike from the south, from Windsor. Sometimes it can be a little scary on the road, but Windsor and other towns have done a nice job of some differentiation. So there they painted it green. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be that, but some differentiation which just sort of gives a car a hesitation versus just a continuation of asphalt, because cars just tend to sort of just drive wherever they feel like driving. And as a bicyclist, if you have parking on one end and a car on another end, when somebody flings their door open without looking, you're ultimately, as a bicyclist, going to have to make a decision: do I hit the door or get hit by a car?
Yep.
Which anyone who's ridden in San Francisco kind of gets that feeling, which is a little scary sometimes. So just something to kind of keep cars away, so that if I have to make that choice to get around the car door, I don't have to make that choice by swinging wildly into traffic. I can still have a buffer between me and the cars coming from me.
And we do have a 12-foot travel lane there, which will give us a little bit of room too. But we have to look into that. There was another comment too on high priority was parking, and I think you meant more parking. You were talking about not losing parking for a treaty, and so I'm making some assumptions that the amount of parking there you would like to see expanded in some way. Is that fair?
And David, there were a couple of areas that talked about parking reservoirs,
Yes.
which I think is really interesting. And a
Yeah.
big part of the discussion during the chat process too, that there's a park once kind of strategy, strategically located so people can park and then walk, and not have to drive around through town.
So some of that might be solved off the street right away, but it should be looked at more closely on the way.
Yeah, I'd say that the issue with the bicyclist and making them safe in that approach would be another vote against having parking on the street in that corridor.
Yep.
And going for the reservoir. would
It's
be
in
a better
conflict.
solution.
Yep, I agree. 3 minutes after 9, are we there?
Adios.
Thank you very much for coming.